The following is a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
From the birthplace of modern winemaking, Sonoma, California, welcome to the Winemakers. Local experts Sam Couturi, Bart Hansen, and Brian Casey, along with host John Myers, invite you to listen in as they discuss all facets of winemaking. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and let's hear what the guys have to say this week.
Hey everybody. Welcome to the Winemakers. We're here at the DTC Wine Symposium in beautiful Monterey, California. I shouted out the hotel last time and I was told that they're not a sponsor of the show and then we don't get any Hyatt money for saying that we're here. So screw them or pay us. Please. Yeah. Well, it's an aggressive era. Bart, it's an aggressive era. So we've always been fans of the DTC Symposium. This is the third year that we've done this. Yeah, and as much as we've been fans of the DTC Symposium, we prefer this location.
Oh, there you go.
To the previous location, and I won't disparage Concord, but we're happy to be in Monterey. And one of the ways that we got to Monterey is the winemaking community of Monterey helped bring the symposium down here. So we're stoked to have some Monterey wine people on the show. Yeah, because we're not in Sonoma anymore, Bart.
Well, and the funny thing is our friend of the pod, Adam Lee, who's
Adam Lee,
a longtime proponent of Monterey wines, but lives in Santa Rosa, and by way of Texas, here we are.
Yes, I'm a lover of Monterey. I'm a chooser of Monterey grapes. But I have not chosen to live in Chualar or Soledad yet, somehow.
I mean, understandable,
yeah.
You know, I guess. I don't know. I'm going to get hate from those places, and I can't say I've been there. So
There's not enough in Chualar to hate you. Maybe Soledad.
Okay. Well, and so, Adam, in a few minutes or a couple hours here, you're going to do a panel, moderate a panel with our esteemed guests. Will you just take a second, introduce everybody, and maybe
I'll start
about
out
sort of like what you're going to be talking about a little bit.
We'll go left to right.
Okay.
We'll go start out with Sabrine. Sabrine, would you like to tell everybody who you are?
Sure. I'm Sabrine Rodems, and I'm the winemaker at Wrath Wines, and I also have my own brand called Scratch. I've been in this county for 20 years now. I celebrated my 20th year of making wine. I actually came here directly from David Ting. Yeah. I came here directly from Davis. I was an older student. I got my master's degree from UC Davis, and I think I'm one of the very few students who came to this area. Most of them go to Napa and Sonoma. So I'm very happy that I chose here. A part of that choice was about deciding where I wanted to live the rest of my life, where I wanted to retire. There were a lot of decisions that went into that, and I'm very happy I'm here.
So next is Rhonda. Rhonda, thank you for being here as well.
Thank you so much for the invite. So I'm Rhonda Motil, and I'm Vice President of Marketing at Lohr Vineyards and Wines. I'm particularly thrilled to be on this with such an esteemed group of winemakers, so representing a little bit of the marketing side of things.
We're nothing without you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So I've been with Lohr now for 12 years, but my roots are heavily in Monterey. I was the previous executive director of the Monterey Vintners and Growers Association for about 10 years, starting in 2002. So I've always had a passion for Monterey. It was my first entry into the wine industry, actually. Prior to that, I had 10 years of high-tech marketing experience. So very thrilled to be here. Great to share stories with all of you. And I do reside in Monterey County, but I live in northern Monterey County, and I love traveling from Monterey all the way down to our many vineyards in Paso Robles, where Lohr also calls home.
Cool. And then last but not least, one of the greatest growers that I've ever met and have, Gary Franscioni, who is also in 45 days or so the best man at my wedding. So Congratulations, Gary. Thank you for being here.
And shout out to your better half, Murray, who's out selling wine right now while you're hanging out at a conference, right?
And Denver and Aspen, where she's like, it's getting up to 8 degrees today. She was thrilled.
We won't complain about the 39 this morning in Monterey.
Gary, tell us about you.
Thank you, Adam. I'm looking forward to the wedding in Las Vegas, I can announce. And the bachelor party was just held in Paso Robles, and we all survived.
Yeah.
But so I'm third generation farmer from 1907 on the same property. My grandfather immigrated from Switzerland and Italy, both grandparents. It's just, this is my home. Farming's in my blood. I'm the owner of Lohr Wines. My wife and I founded that in 2001. I've been farming all my life. Started planting grapes in 1996 at Rosella's, and then partnered up with Gary Pizzoni and planted Gary's Vineyard in 1997, and then acquired that vineyard or property and then developed it, and then moved on in 2007 and planted Sierra Mar, a vineyard a property that we own. And then in 2008, we developed Sabrinas. And then in 2018, we developed Windrock. So we went from nothing to 5 vineyards. And my sons are in the business. One's in the vineyard, one's in the winery, and it's just a dream come true, and I'm honored to be here with all of you.
Just to jump right in on it, can you tell us what your family farmed before grapes?
They start out with dairies, and that's part of the history that I'll be talking about later. And then we moved into row crops. We were growing 17 different row crops at once on different properties, valley floor. And then
through like the Salinas Valley?
Yeah, and then near Soledad. Okay. And then in the right next to Wrath, actually, where Sabrine makes wine. And then in the uplands, where Rosella's we were growing like dry beans, field crops, sugar beets, potatoes, and then started developing citrus ground, lemons, avocados, and mainly our main business is vineyards now.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
And I don't know if the rest of the country realizes, when they California bread basket of the nation, really it's the Salinas Valley, right? I mean, there's so much agriculture in general and, super varied, wide ranging stuff growing around here.
Yeah. It's so amazing. People talk about the drive from essentially Gilroy to Paso. And I'm caught up driving because I'm trying to figure out what the crops are. Like, what are they harvesting there? What is that? It was a game that we used to play when I was a kid, name that crop. So I always love driving through it. You have to be careful, though, because you never know when some sort of heavy equipment's right on the road or pulling
or speed traps.
Or speed traps, exactly. Right. Right.
So it's interesting that it is called a salad bowl of the world. And in Salinas Valley, for 9 months out of the year, they produce 90% of the vegetables across the United States.
That's amazing.
So except the homegrown states in certain summer months, et cetera, it's just a workhorse for the country.
Yeah.
And
I left one time coming down checking grapes, and I was given 50 pounds of asparagus to take back home, which neighbors loved. It was absolutely fantastic. Another time I left with 50 pounds of celery, and I got to confess some of that went to waste. We did, 50
how many Bloody Marys could you possibly make?
A lot of peanut butter, that kind of thing.
I mean,
it's on a log.
I heard about this this cleanse you can do with celery water, Adam. So, maybe after the wedding.
For your
yes, exactly.
Or maybe you should have started it after the
bachelor party.
Yeah. And so can you guys talk a little bit about how the vineyards are laid out in Salinas or in Monterey County, considering we drive through, and I've never been able to take the time to actually drive around and look. It's always my view from 101. So maybe you could kind of give us the
Next time you should take a jaunt down River Road, because I think it's really.
So that's
I would
where
take
you would
get off at Gonzales, or even you can get off in Salinas and drive. Basically, take reservation down until it hits River Road.
Okay.
And right where actually reservation turns into River Road is where Rath's property is. But I think it's an eye opener, and I'll say it again. I've said it a million times. One of the reasons why I chose to work and I live in Santa Cruz, but to live in this area and not go to Napa and Sonoma is because it's not a monoculture.
Right.
It was really important important to me. I think you get more diversity in people, you get more diversity in your life. I didn't want my whole life to be about what I did for a living, which I think can happen in other regions. And so that to me was really important. And then being near an educational center was really important. But you see that when you drive down River Road.
Yeah.
There used to be a lot of sheep too, but I know up on the hill, you'll see Gary's has his avocados, and Kirk Williams and all those guys have avocados and lemons. They have obviously grapes on the lower area, and then on the flat area, more grapes, which is where Rath is. We're sort of on the sloping area. And then when you get to the base, and I've seen everything there, asparagus, I mean, everything is there, asparagus, carrots. And I always think when I'm driving to work during harvest and it's 5:30 in the morning, I think I get up early. There's already people out in the fields picking and working, and they've been out there with lights at night or in the morning as crack of dawn.
Yeah, I leave Santa Rosa really early to get through the East Bay, get through traffic all the way down. And I'm like, okay, I made it without traffic. But then you start to get south of Salinas and right before sunrise. And all of a sudden there's more traffic than I ever saw on 880 as everybody's going to work at 5 in the morning kind of thing.
Yeah.
At J. Lohr, we're in the Arroyo Seco, and I think one of the most shocking things for me 20 years ago, when I was spending so much time as the executive director in all of the AVAs, was the wind that was in the Arroyo Seco. It was, I came as a young gal in my 20s, and I had a convertible, had the top down at 2 or 3 o'clock. You clearly cannot do that. It is just, the wind certainly picks up, and hence the long hang time that we have with a lot of our fruit in the vineyards there. But it is a very unique region. The fog that comes in, the beauty of the Monterey Bay, it's truly, really special. So make sure you drive through next time. Yeah.
Will you, or maybe all of you, kind of describe the appellations of Monterey County, maybe from a 101, heading south on 101 perspective, Arroyo Seco, Santa Lucia Highlands, because that's what I do as I'm driving through going, oh, there's a vineyard up on the hill there. I wonder if that's this, what's that? And sort of like break it down a little bit like that, if that makes sense.
Rhonda, why don't you, or Gary, go ahead.
Sure. First of all, there's 10 AVAs in Monterey County. Okay. And so it's really diverse because it's such a long county, square miles, and it's probably 70, 80 miles long. I mean, I'll start in the SLH and let you guys talk about Lockwood and all the way going down. But basically, Santa Lucia Highlands is a Region 1, possibly Region 2 in some areas. Climate, due to Monterey Bay and the great fog we have for 10, 12 hours a day, rolls in at 10 o'clock at night and cools down. We have those great swings of temperatures from 52 degrees at night in the growing season to 72 in the daytime. And that, along with those winds that come up and blow out that fog off Monterey Bay at 1 o'clock or 10 in the morning, there's only about 2 or 3 hours of real quiet stillness, and then you get the 1 o'clock winds coming off Monterey Bay. And that gives you such a long, cool growing season. And I always feel that Monterey should make very good, consistent wines every year, or at least 9 out of 10, whatever that is, because we don't have spring frost and we don't have fall rains, because really we only get about 14 inches of rain a year, and we're only sitting at 2.5 today. So we're really in a dry area next to the coast where Russian River might get 50 inches. Santa Rita averages 22 down south. Oregon, has their issues with early fall rains. So we're in a good place. And that's why we should grow consistent, good grapes, excellent grapes, and make excellent, good wine.
I can address the Arroyo Seco. The Arroyo Seco was established as an AVA in 1983. There are about 7,000 acres of grapes that are within that AVA, so it's pretty large. There are so many fantastic players, vineyards and wineries that are in that area, but I'll call out a couple who are the most recognizable to consumers, and that would be our friends, the Wente family, Jackson Family Vineyards, and J. Lohr. They would be the lion's share of that particular acreage.
The Wentes are down here, I didn't know that.
Yes, they do a great job. So back in the early 70s, Jerry Lohr was one of the pioneers of that particular AVA, particularly with the the Wentes as well.
Jerry passed away fairly recently, right?
Oh, no.
No? Okay,
No,
sorry.
that's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Jerry is super active. No, yeah, Jerry just turned actually 87 years old on January 1st.
Oh, it must have been that. Maybe it was a birthday.
Birthday party.
He's a New Year's baby. The family is actually on the cover of Market Watch this past month, celebrating their legacy of 50 years. His children, though, are very active in the business. He does have three children that all hold leadership positions at the company. But Jerry in the office every single day and still a visionary for the region as well as our company.
Yeah, talking about 50 years, we actually went on a scramble at Rath because Dr. Lemon, who is Michael Thomas's stepfather, who owned the property since the 70s, planted it. We found the paperwork, 1974. So we're coming up on our 50th at that property, which is San Saba Vineyards, which is in the Monterey AVA. And across the cows across the street are in the SLH. But I have the luxury as a winemaker. We've been sourcing fruit from Arroyo Seco and SLH. And we do a nice single vineyard series that we do from different regions of the Monterey. And again, to address the wind and the rain, I think our average at the property is 11 inches of rain a year. So we get a long growing season. We really have, I've always said this, and I don't want any other winemakers to find out, we have the luxury of time on our hands, and rarely do I feel like I'm in a pinch to pick, and it really makes my job easy. And also, when you have a small winery like we do, it allows us the ability to not freak out about turning tanks because I can sort of push stuff off that I know is going to take a little longer, that's higher acid, because I only have so many tanks. And so once I'm in, I'm locked in, and often the stuff I do pick later is just out of necessity, but at perfect ripeness, because it's just sort of sitting out there in reasonable temperatures. So very lucky.
Number one planted grape variety in Monterey?
Ooh.
Chardonnay or Pinot?
Chardonnay. Yeah.
So there are 40,000 acres of planted vines
Yeah.
in Monterey. And
That's amazing.
thank you for saying 7,000 in Arroyo Seco. There's 5,000 in Santa Lucia Highlands. And do you want to continue south?
Oh, well, Arroyo Seco, then San Antonio Valley, which is very hot. I mean, talk about diversity. That's just insane to go from, when I started at Rath, there was a lot of Cabernet and Merlot planted there. Not that it was appropriately planted. In fact, a lot of our old vines are grafted onto Cabernet rootstock, and we're in the process of replanting a lot of that stuff because it's after 50 years, it's finally crashing out the rootstock. But it's interesting that then you go down to San Antonio Valley where it's so hot that they're growing Cab Merlot on a lot of Spanish varietals down there. And then there's the Chalon AVA on the east side. Mm-hmm. And then
Carmel Valley.
Carmel Valley. Yes, Carmel Valley. And San Lucas.
San Bernabe.
San Bernabe.
Hames.
Hames. Yeah, all those warmer climates. So it's such a long area that we really get a huge, and we've talked about it in the past, sort of that thermal rainbow where it's cooler near the bay and it gets hotter and hotter and hotter as you go south. You can grow, obviously, they're growing Spanish variety, Tinta Cow, things like that in San Antonio Valley, which is impressive.
And San Bernardby is I'm going to probably screw this up also, largest vineyard, contiguous vineyard. Yeah. And how many acres is that?
5,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5,000 acres. And the newest one that appeared was in 2022, and I wasn't really familiar with it. That one is the Gabalon. There was a new one.
AVA, yes.
Yeah. So there's still things going on in Monterey.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really exciting for us.
Sabrine, before we move on to the next one, will you talk about these delicious bubbles that we started with here?
Yes. Well, we talked about Chardonnay and how much Chardonnay is grown in Monterey. And I make 4 Chardonnays for Rath. And so when I had my brand, I enjoy Chardonnay. It's not my favorite white varietal, but I do drink a lot of it in bubble. What's your favorite? Well, actually, I drink a lot of this in bubble form. I drink a lot of Chardonnay. Every time I say it's not my favorite, I drink mostly sparkling wine, and most of that is Chardonnay based. So I'm basically lying.
I don't like Chardonnay either. I drink Chablis. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. I just like it in this form. This is a This is a Blanc de Blanc. It's made from Clone 17 Chardonnay off of Rath's property, off of San Saba Vineyards. I also do a Brut Rosé, which is made from Clone 96 Chardonnay, and then it has a little bit of 828 Pinot in it for color. But I love high acid, pretty screamy. This is a 22. I just love that. Yeah, I just love that high acid, bright acidity. It's not for everybody, but it's for me for sure. The one nice thing about having your own brand is you get to do what you want.
Brian has been reduced to the peanut gallery for this one because he's somming us and cheering from the background.
All right. What are we going to next, Brian? J. Lohr.
All right.
All right.
So, as Brian's point, is the early 70s kind of the beginning of grapes being planted? There was missions here, so there was grapes planted here in the 1800s, right? I mean, what's the
1790s? All the
1790s?
All the California missions had a handful of grapes planted at them,
Right.
out of the 21.
And Carmel was the first mission?
No.
Probably 14, because I know Soledad mission was 13.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they started in San Diego and moved north.
All the way up, yeah.
Were you not there?
No, I went to hippie schools for 5th grade. I didn't learn all that shit.
But it is.
You live in a town with a mission.
Which I know was the last one, and that's all that matters.
I should know this. I have 4 kids, and I visited pretty much all the missions in California, and I still can't remember.
I once saw a ghost at the San Miguel.
Never mind. But yeah, 1970s. I call it early 70s were the earliest plantings, and it was interesting because a lot of insurance companies were financing the projects then because they would get, for every dollar invested, they would get $3 tax credit. So they jumped all over that. And so then they had all kinds of farming companies, Butch Lindley, eventually Steve McIntyre and everybody would do all the custom farming. And their whole game was to appreciation of land. So as long as they could produce grapes, make some kind of 5-10% return on their investment, they were just waiting to flip the land. And some of that's still happening today. But then came the 80s, and the Nicky Hans came into the area, and outside people came in and started planting vineyards. But they were all planting Cabernet and Chardonnay. And as it all worked in the South, but as they moved north, it got cooler and cooler. And it was just after years of producing, they found out the Cabernet tasted like green bell peppers. And maybe 1 out of 15 years would be a really good vintage.
1985.
Yeah.
1985 was
that was like, oh, yeah.
So
Jolly Green Giant.
No, that was great. 85 Smith & Hook was
85 was, okay.
It was like, holy cow, what happened to this? Why is this like, it was fantastic. And so then I'm like, well, the 86 or the 87 or whatever is going to be great. And you're right. It was
Digital.
only every now and then.
Yeah.
And so actually Gary Pizzoni, my partner in one of my vineyards, brought Pinot Noir to the region. And it turned out that it was the right grape varietal for at least Santa Lucia Highlands. And so Han did tear out all their cab over time and planted Pinot and Chard, amongst other Rieslings and another, what else can, Syrahs, a little bit of Syrah.
Yeah.
Cool climate grapes.
Yeah.
And so the 90s hit, and then new planting materials came out of UC Davis, came out of France, Dijon. And so we were planting some of those. And, then the sideways kick hit. And I always say Pinot Noir was set up. We were ahead 6-0, and then the sideways movie kicked the extra point through, and we were on our way. And then the 2000s were still continuing to grow this region, and so it's been fun. It's been a fun ride.
It's awesome. Let's see. So tell us about this wine.
Okay, this is our 2023 J. Lohr October Night Chardonnay. One of the reasons why I particularly brought it today to share at this conference is most people know J. Lohr's Chardonnay program for our Riverstone Chardonnay. It's what you can find on most wine shelves, most stores, as well as on a heck of a lot of wine menus throughout the U.S. This wine is a much smaller production for us. It's part of our Vineyard Series tier of wines. We produce only 3,200 cases of it, so much less than our Riverstone Chardonnay. This is crafted by another extremely talented female winemaker in the Monterey County area, Kristen Barnheisel. Kristen was just nominated last year for Winemaker of the Year from Wine Enthusiast, and she's doing an exceptional job with our white wine program.
Kristen used to be up in Sonoma County, right?
Yeah, you guys probably are very familiar with Kristen. She's been at Lohr now for a little bit over 8 years and just doing a fantastic job. So when Kristen describes this wine, she's most excited about clone 809. She says it's the trademark clone for this. There are 5 clones that are in the wine. Again, we only produce about 3,200 cases of this. This was a particularly cool vintage for us, one of the coolest in over a decade. So we picked most of this, as the name implies, in October. So most of it was picked from late October through October 30th about. There are, truth be told, some years when we do need to start harvesting this in September for October night. So yes, as a marketer, that's a little bit of a little snafu for me, but I love that we can honestly say this particular vintage, as in most of them, is an October vintage. It has a slight touch of oak on it that really showcases with the floral aroma. It's aged in French oak barrels, and we've been getting some great reviews on this wine over the past couple of years. Yeah, we've been getting
crispy.
We've been getting some great
crispy,
reviews on this again, and it's an opportunity for Kristen to showcase on a much smaller scale the beauty of the Arroyo Seco and some of the really high quality that can come out of that greenfield area. So I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, you should never let history get in the way of a good marketing story.
Right.
Yeah.
100% agree.
Or a podcast.
Or a podcast. Yes.
I mean, in general, you guys are always harvesting. What's an early season
August.
for? Like you would start in August.
Yeah, Sauv Blanc and August. Well, August is typical for bubbles, but for like our regular Sauv Blanc, we do an early pick on our Sauv Blanc. We keep it pretty low alc. But the unfortunate thing is I have my own bottling line, so I'm bottling right up. Right. And then I got to clean, and then it's like everything's happening all at once, and it becomes a little chaotic. We try to, we like it when it starts after Labor Day.
I do think SLH is somewhat unique. I see a little bit of it down in Santa Rita Hills as well, but you can choose to a large extent when you want to pick based on what style you're going for, because it is so cool because we don't get the rains that you have. So I had somebody one time use the analogy of it's kind of like T-ball, and the ball is set there for you. And if you know what you're doing, you want to hit it to left field, you can do that. You want to go right, there opportunities are out there to do what you want to do in most years. The last time down here, y'all remember up north, 2011, where we got like almost 7 inches of rain over 2 weekends. Down here, over 1 weekend in the Santa Lucia Highlands, it was 0.67 inches, which you can survive, 2/3 of an inch without an issue.
It's almost perfect.
Yeah.
If you almost
It
that,
kind of helped.
Keeps the dust down a little bit.
So it's very different down here. And so some people will start picking much earlier. And then in 2023, we'll get to it in a little bit. I didn't start till October the 7th with Pinot.
Right. And these grapes are all hand harvested as well from our vineyards in Arroyo Seco. So
No, I think the only time I ever have seen in the 20 some odd years I've been down there pressure from rain was 2009. It was in October, and it was a storm from Mexico. So typically we get those storms from Alaska that we just got little tip of. When Napa, Sonoma, everybody else gets hit, we get the little 1/4 inch sprinkle or 1/10 of an inch sprinkle. This thing had come from Mexico, and the issue wasn't even the storm. It was after, I think the 3 or 4 days after that storm, it was muggy outside, and we had started seeing sour rot. And luckily we had picked half of our Chardonnay. I wasn't worried about Syrah so much, but we had pre-picked half the Chardonnay because we were a little worried. And then then the storm hit. And then basically we picked that Chardonnay, but we wound up dumping it. It definitely had sour rot in it. You could taste it. It tastes like streptomyces. It tastes like dirt. Yeah. And it doubles every 9 hours or something. So you got to go. But that's 2009. That's the only time I've ever felt pressure as a winemaker to pick. And even then I sort of had hedged my bet already. I kind of knew it was coming. So it wasn't even that stressful, to be quite honest.
Right.
So when I think about like Monterey tourism, it's not, I don't think necessarily wine tourism first. It's the aquariums, it's the golf courses. So and being that we are at the DTC conference, what is the wine tourism cultural? Is that something that's building? When also when I think of 5,000 acre vineyards, I don't necessarily think of a DTC sort of model. It's probably more going to big distribution. So how's that going here? How do you sort of like feel like you are measuring up to other wine tourism destinations? Because there's obviously great places to come down here and visit, right?
Back when I was heading up the association, it was almost like a blessing and a curse, because there's so much to do that, the messaging out about the region was about all these fantastic things. There's fantastic golf, there's the aquarium, there's the food scene, there's the trails, there's marathons, there was the ocean. There's so much going on.
Biking, cycling.
Yeah, that wine was one of many, many things to do. Whereas a lot of the regions that I won't necessarily say that we were in competition with, but there's only so many trips that you can do in a given year, wine was the thing. Right. So again, a little bit of a blessing and a curse as you were marketing yourself. It's kind of a little bit of a lead-in or a teaser to the seminar that we're going to be on, but that was one of the reasons why the winery corridor, which was established back in around 2012, was so important for us. It was a collaboration between the wine industry and the political, the politics at the time, the government, to really set out some standards and really put a backing, both financially as well as from a procedural standpoint, behind the establishment of wineries, tasting rooms, and that corridor.
Yes, what is?
Because our listeners
pretend like we don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. I mean, there was because there was so much going on at that time with tourism to the area, there was a fear or a concern that more wineries and more tasting rooms would mean more people. So there are pros and cons with having more tourists in the area. So the wine industry proactively went into this with being transparent about the impacts of growing grapes and showcasing that we were really stewards of the land, and put forth a proactive approach to establishing tasting rooms along that corridor, particularly in the Santa Lucia Highlands area. Yeah. So, I mean, Sabrine, you were on my board at that time. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
I felt like we worked on that plan and the general plan for the whole time I was on the board. I think we sort of chipped away at the problem, which is you have a very low growth county politically. And they think, one thing I always remember is we brought in somebody to talk to the board. And he basically said, we asked people in Monterey how much of Monterey County they think is developed. And they sort of took in feedback, and everybody was like 40%, 50%, 20%, 30%. 5% of Monterey County is developed. And these are the people who are voting. So I think being proactive about stepping in and saying, just because we want a tasting room and a winery on this road doesn't mean there's going to be a McDonald's on the corner following, right? So there was this sort of hyperactivity around growth, that it was all going to be doom and gloom. And so it was a hard nut, and we took a crack at it, and I think it's been relatively successful. And then there's also, my tasting room for my brand, Scratch, is in Carmel Valley. And we'll talk about this also later in the seminar, which is it's a very different place, right? It's different than Carmel. People who live there don't like to leave, which is nice. Those are my locals, kind of. And then there's all the people who come in from outside to golf, but they're not coming for wine. I don't remember when the big what year it was the Santa Rosa fire happened. And a lot of people who had vacations planned to go to Napa and Sonoma came here. I never made so much money in my tasting room in my life in the month of October. And it was because people go to Napa and Sonoma to buy wine. They don't come here to buy wine. They come here and do the wine thing on the side. It's one day of many days. So that's what we're trying to capture. And it's a little bit trickier than being a wine destination where people.
It's tricky, but I think it's an opportunity. I mean, that's
I think so too.
We're going to be talking about is that it's incumbent upon us to go out and to other places. And, let's say you were down at one of the tournaments down in Arizona or whatever right now, and you have a chance to pour wine. A lot of these people are going to be coming up to Pebble for a tournament before too long. And you're like, while you're there, come taste wine. Yeah. And I think it's really exciting when I'm up in Sonoma and seeing tourism challenged right now in Napa, the same thing. You're not seeing it here. I actually had the chance to play Pebble this past year, and shock of shocks. I know that's surprising. And it was
hashtag humble brag.
Yeah, and it was swamped in February. I mean, overwhelmed with people. And tell me truly that would be the same in Sonoma and Napa in February. It's not. We have opportunities. We have challenges, but those are opportunities as well.
All the crowds in February are just posing for pictures of the mustard fields. Right?
Yeah.
So, and again, for someone who obviously doesn't know the area, am I right to think that if you're coming to Monterey County to go wine tasting, you're still staying in either Carmel, Monterey, Carmel Valley, correct?
Yeah.
I mean,
yes.
Are there places off the 101 farther south? There's not. I mean, to my knowledge, there's really not. So this is the hub where we're at.
Yes.
And then it's easy day trips to get to these places. Mm-hmm. How would you say it? Over the hill, right?
Yes, or down the valley.
Right, down the valley.
Down the valley, yeah.
Right.
It's what you used to see in Sonoma and Napa, where people would come up from the East Bay, from Walnut Creek or whatever, instead of saying you had to make a whole weekend. And now one of the problems is coming up and staying, certainly in Napa at least, is so prohibitively expensive for a weekend. I really think there are those opportunities. And the other thing we're going to talk about is things like Silicon Valley. It's not all of that far to come down. And that there's audiences there that we need to tap into.
Mm-hmm. That, and I see a lot of folks from Fresno. Yeah. And from the Central Valley coming over and doing a day at a week at the coast or a weekend at the coast, and they pop in. Yeah.
Adam's so right about the opportunity. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not like we put a wine corridor in place 10 years ago and all of a sudden there's a boom in tourism. We've got the hotels off the 101. It's going to take a while, but I think that's one of the reasons why I was so thrilled that the symposium is coming to Monterey. It opens the door and gives us all opportunities to showcase both the quality of wines as well as the tourism and the great tasting rooms that we have here. So,
yes.
And maybe work some golf in.
Yeah, there might be. Get out there a little bit, sure.
All right, so we're tasting right now. Yeah, it's
delicious.
The Clarice, but it's from one of Gary's vineyards. Right?
It is from the Rosella's vineyard, Gary's home property.
It's fantastic.
Thank you, thank you.
Super juicy.
So.
I know. We do need to have a little
we will have a little toast
moment,
here. Yes. Clarice is the venture I started after I sold Siduri. I started this in 2017, doing some different things, doing a lot of whole cluster on this. It's about 76% whole cluster, doing very little additions. I get two different sections from the Rosella's vineyard, one at the very top, one near the top, and one at the bottom, two different clones. But instead of picking them separately, I pick them together. I make wine kind of like my grandmother taught me to cook, which was to take a crock pot and put the meat, the potatoes, the carrots, the broth, the seasoning in, and cook it slowly over time, and it will meld together. And so I take these grapes that usually would ripen 10 days, 2 weeks apart, and put them within one large stainless steel pot and ferment them together. And 2023 was certainly an exceptional vintage. I think this was October 10th or 12th, something like that, very late harvest. And it was perfect. You got ripe seeds, ripe stems, didn't really have to do any acid adjustments or anything. It was it was a dream in a lot of ways.
So you get these two sections of the vineyard 10 days apart, probably in the ripening curve. How are you choosing your pick date based on like one section hits something and you go, all right, we'll take the other section too?
With the rows are slightly longer at the top, but I go through with a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket and fill it up with a certain number of clusters going across the top and then a certain number of clusters going across the bottom and crush it up. And we sit on the back of Gary's truck, the tailgate as it's open, and we taste the juice and look at the weather and talk about how it's going and what days are open, and we pick. It's our favorite day of the year. It's one of my favorite days of the year. I'm about to get married, so I shouldn't say that's my favorite day of the year.
Well, that'll be your favorite day ever. Ever, right? You're gonna have,
But I love it's pretty much every Saturday I'm down, and we do that with Mark Pizzoni and Gary and Adam Franscioni, and it's a fantastic time.
So, I mean, it's a field blend.
It is a field blend. It's a purposeful field blend. Yeah.
Cool.
And that worked now that the vines are 20-something years old. I don't know that it would have worked when they're 3 years old, and it would have changed things dramatically if you had a warmer period.
Right.
What are the clones, Adam?
Pommard and then the Pizzoni selection.
Okay. Yeah. It's nice. It has a nice bright juiciness to it. Yeah. Super yummy.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Really nice.
Yeah. I feel like 22 is a great vintage too. 21 and 23 to me, I don't know, they had this consommé quality where my lighter wines that I picked earlier looked lighter but tasted like consommé, like had packed all this flavor in there. And that just goes back to that luxury of time that we have where even though it was a later year, we just waited. We're not worried about the rain. So it's really, really a great place to make wine because we really have the epitome of a winemaker's selection.
Well, there was an article on Santa Lucia Highlands in Venice recently talking about how good the 22s are compared to the rest of, or a lot of places in California. And one of the reasons there was, well, we had big Labor Day heat spikes. I mean, very
crazy.
Large up in Sonoma and all that.
The double spike, 5 days over 110.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I think there was one day here over 100.
Right.
What didn't happen was it didn't cool down in the same way it normally does at night. So the wines are a little rounder, a little richer, but they're not really suffered by the spike of heat that we got up north.
I just don't say 21, 22, and 23 because it makes me seem like I'm lying. But I do think we were all great vintages. I'm really happy with everything that I've seen the last 3 years. And 24 was a great vintage too.
We'll skip over 2020.
I hate to say it. Anything after 2020 is great at this point.
Is it safe to say that whereas other appellations are kind of people are talking about different varieties that they're testing because of climate change, is it safe to say that Monterey is not really having to think that way? Or are you?
I hope not, because I love Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but we grow Syrah as well. And in King City, it'll harvest the last week of August, and we'll harvest the last week of October, sometimes early November. So 60 days, 20 miles away, kind of gives a perspective, too, of the diversity of our whole Monterey County. But I planted an acre of Grenache because I love Grenache. I love Chateauneuf. And I did it for the purpose of not just having 50, 60 cases for my wine club, but with the idea for 20 years, let's see what it does. Because if we do have climate change and it gets warmer, maybe Grenache is the next best thing, or the next varietal, which is very similar to Pinot Noir and Syrah. It's like a cross. So that's one of my 20-year projects. I may not be around for 20 more years, but my kids will be, and they've had the luxury of following that.
Right. I mean, Pinot Noir in the cooler areas will last longer, right? I mean, so there's less worry about that, but maybe those warmer areas have to start thinking forward like that.
Pinot's generally grown on the coast from Oregon down to Santa Barbara. 6, 7 regions, and within 30 miles of the coast. And those hopefully would have the best chance of surviving, climate change.
Well, I love Grenache too, and I actually really love cool climate Syrah. I think the Syrahs that we grow in our area are some of the most exciting wines I know that I have made, and they're different. They're lower in alcohol, and they tend to be less of a big fruit bomb and a little bit more, to me, sophisticated. And I get a lot more spice characteristics out of them. And I actually brought, just because I didn't know what we were bringing, I brought my premium blend C47. I brought a Grenache Syrah, and it's 75% Grenache and 25% Syrah. But the Grenache comes from Arroyo Seco, from Ventana's property, and then the Syrah comes from Rath's property.
We're going to get to the
anyway.
Grenache.
Sorry,
don't worry.
We will of the game because we have this in front of us.
The Winemakers podcast doesn't skip the Grenache runs on the table.
Gary, I think we have your wine coming up here.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I loved your 23 because I thought I love late harvest. And as we all talked about it, nothing really harvested before the first week of October. And it reminded me so much of 1999 was the same thing. Those don't come around too often. 22, I think Sabrine also mentioned, it came off. We're also happy to get out of 2020 and make wine in 21. I think we were thinking like, okay, this is a great vintage, but it was just, to me, it was a very good vintage. And then 22 came back with a really low yielding crop. And so what we normally average maybe 3 tons in given years, we were here at 2.5 tons to 2.25. So it was really, and then we had that Labor Day heat spike. And we picked after, probably 70% of the grapes after that heat. So Sierra Mar it's kind of unusual. You can get into this argument, and our Wine Growers Association, the Santa Lucia Highlands wine artisans, don't like to touch this, but I do. I think there is a southern SLH and a northern SLH. And the Clarice was the northern, and this is the southern. There's a slope there by the Bianchi bench that I think it makes a turn, and it really changes. It's a little warmer. The elevations are higher. So Sierra Mar, the one we're tasting now, the elevation is 1,000 feet. It has different valleys and ridges, and all the plantings are like 3 or 4 acres. And I have 8 different clones, so it's a multi-clone bottling. And but the elevations, the soils are different. They're decomposed granite soils, whereas the north has sandy clay loams. And I always say that when the fog comes in off Monterey Bay, it goes all the way possibly to King City, Greenfield. But it takes an extra hour at night to get there, and an extra it burns off an hour earlier in the morning. So it gives you 2 full hours of more daylight, or the north 2 full more hours of fog and cooler weather. That's why when we harvest the whole SLH, we harvest from south to north in general, because that's how it ripens.
Sure.
In given years, it can be different, but it's very interesting. And I think I know there's a difference because I farm, and I buy from Pizzoni too. And so I have a couple of vineyards in the south and 4 vineyards in the north. So I can see the differences. And I think that's exciting because, I grew lettuce and it tastes the same if you're in Salinas or King City. But
does it really?
But oh yeah. But
we're not gonna get into lettuce terroir.
I mean,
but if you take Pinot Noir, and Gary's is 2 miles south of Rosella's, and we harvest that 10 to 14 days earlier than Rosella's, and because it's not quite as close to the bay, and it's because of that climate situation I just set up. It's exciting to me, and that's what I love about Pinot Noir, is that I can have 5 different sites and they all taste
so different. Yeah, that's the beauty of what I do, is when I get to source from other vineyards at different elevations on different soils, it keeps my job interesting for sure. I'm not doing the same thing over and over again. But I'll double down on because I always felt like Rath's property, like that's where the fog broke, like right near Bianchi Bench. And I always thought it's just because I was coming to work. But I guess not. It just naturally
It was.
I'm coming.
So we make about 500 cases of this every year. It's one of our flagships along with Gary's and Rosella's. It's family-owned property. Rohr is a family operation. There's only my 2 sons, my winemaker Scott Shapley, and one other man in the cellar, and then we just get out across the states. We're in 20 states. We make about 6,000 cases, and we have an allocated club, not a. I don't like to call it a club. I don't like to force people to buy wine. I don't want to just send them whatever I have. I want them to choose what they like.
Did Scott work for you at some point?
Scott Shapley, the Rohr winemaker, was my first employee.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I knew that name.
In 2001, Scott was at our first vintage because Adam made my wine in 2001.
Okay.
So the very first vintage, 2001, we're working on blending, and it's Scott Shapley and me, and Gary is there. And he brought his young son, teenage son, Adam Franscioni up, and we're all coming up with different blends on one of the wines. And Adam, out of the blue, was like, Adam Franscioni was like, can I try making a blend? We're like, sure, whatever. Let's let the kid play. So then we taste the blends blind. And at the end of it, Scott reveals the winner. And he's like, well, it's Adam's blend. And I'm like, oh, well, thank you. I make the wine. I mean, it's great. And they're like, no, not Adam Lee, Adam Franscioni. And I'm like, oh, shit, I'm out of the job. I just lost it right here. And so, I mean, it was a great lesson about blending. It was a great lesson about how you just go into this and try to make the best wine. And I still have the privilege of actually coming down and helping work on some of the Pinot Noir blends with Rohr. And I have the commitment to what is the best blend, what is the best wine, no matter what. You sometimes see that ebb with as people get larger. That's not the case at Rohr. Rohr is that committed all the time, and it starts with Gary.
And what's the name? What's the story behind the name Rohr?
Well, Franscioni's too hard to pronounce and spell and market.
Fair enough.
In 2001, everybody was naming their wines this creek, that canyon, this ridge. Right. And my wife and I didn't want to be like everybody else. So
There's no worry about that.
There's no worry about that. So, fog and wind are very important to our valley, or our growing region. So we love the roar of the winds that come through our property. And then when it does rain, the roar of the creeks that go through my property, you can hear it's a sense. And also it's multi-meaning, so I can go into any wine dinner or, anywhere I talk and tell it, but we're sports fans, so we love the roar of a stadium crowd. We love that chill that goes down your spine when there's a home run or touchdown and you're high-fiving somebody that you don't even know in your life. And I wanted to put that feeling into a bottle of wine. As awesome. Crazy as that sounds.
Yeah.
And so being farmers and tractor drivers and everything, somebody said, you got to have a logo. I said, what the hell's a logo? And they go, well, you got to recognize it, label on the shelf, and it's something to stand out. So my wife found these two lions high-fiving each other, and really it's her and I celebrating food and wine. It's not about a presumptuous psalm saying you got to have white wine with fish and red wine with meat and all that stuff. It's just like, hey, enjoy it. It's wine, it's food.
And while we're at it, what was the inspiration of Scratch?
Oh, Scratch. Well, my husband's a trademark attorney, and we really struggled finding in 2010. We really struggled finding a name in 2010 when I started the brand, and it because everything's taken. And of course, he's like, even if somebody is close, you don't want to do that. And but we would sit on the couch every Sunday and type. My old label had a girl with a gas mask and had 3 scratches in it. And then also me, I'm a marketing person's nightmare because we also have chickens. And so my husband's like, well, what about Scratch? And I was like, Google it. So what Sunday morning, we go to USPTO, nobody has it. We go to Google, nobody has Scratch wines. We go to, what's the other one? Oh, Cola search, nothing. And I said to my husband, he's a mediator now. And I said to him, you're gonna register for that for me on Monday, aren't you? And he goes, no, I don't do that anymore. I'm a mediator. I'm like, if I'm your only client, honey, you're gonna register that for me on Monday. And luckily, he was renting office space from his old firm, so they're now my trademark attorneys. But yeah, so
you found a better attorney. Is what you're saying.
The funny thing is, the only thing I couldn't get was Scratch.com. I got ScratchWines.com because Scratch.com was a DJ school in LA. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. They can have it.
Right.
But the name Wrath actually comes from a Led Zeppelin song, but I always talk about Wrath as the wind. As a winemaker, to me, it really represents the wind there. I mean, people think it's Steinbeck. It's not. I mean, that's not how we... most people don't know that Steinbeck's from our region, which is another thing we can talk about.
I've always wanted, every time I drive through Salinas, to stop at the Steinbeck Center.
Oh, it's
And
amazing.
I've never pulled it off.
Yeah.
Another thing to tourism in Monterey County that's not going wine tasting.
Yeah,
No,
if you're
it's-
a literary buff,
it's amazing, yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. But to me, Wrath is always about, as a winemaker, about the wind, because it's ferocious. You know, we like the stress, but we don't like too much stress.
Okay. Will you explain the story?
They're all different. I don't know which one that one says.
Let me read it. Hold it together, they tell you. In life, as in wine, the right technique is needed. Winemaker Sabrine Rodems, did I say that right?
Yes.
Joins Syrah and Grenache, just like she used to, join equipment together on film sets using a clothespin known as a C47. She got the right technique. We hope you enjoy our clothespin wine as you hold your life together. Unclip the unconventional.
I had great copywriters for this brand, but people wanted me to name the wine after myself, my ultra premium wine. And to me, Sabrine Rodems, it's a little, and then Sabrine R. And we went through all the things. And I said, just not my jam. And because my old life, I had been a stagehand for many years, and I still keep my union card, local IATSC, local 16, San Francisco. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to the grand opening of the ballet, to the gala, and I'm going to be in the tent that I was normally setting up. It'll be a complete wearing a ball gown. Yeah, got my nails done. So it'll be interesting for me to sort of go a full 360 on that, or 180 on that, I guess it would be. But I love Grenache and Syrah, and like I said, the Grenache is from Arroyo Seco. It's from Ventana's property. I used to consult for them. And then the Syrah is Cool Climate Syrah from Rath's property, San Saba Vineyard. But yeah, I wanted a brand to be, I only make 100 cases. The C47 wines are all blended wines. That's why we use the C47, the clip, the clothespin.
Are there other names of clothespins? Like
Well,
C40? Is it like, can I go to like the clothespin emporium and be like, I need 17 C47s and I'd like 14
I don't know why
D12s?
stagehands called them C47s. There's a lot of things we call things in the film business. And every DP or gaffer I ever worked with, they always had their own language. It depended on how old they were. I had one guy say, "Get me a little lady." I'm like, I go back to the truck. I'm like, what the hell's a little lady? I don't know what that is. And then somebody hand me a slat stand. I'm like, okay, I guess that's a little lady, But we always called them C47s. And if you Google, like, why do stagehand call clothespin C47, there's like a bunch of things. Like maybe it was an old military model number, but nobody really knows. We call them bullets or C47s, and every stagehand has one. And it's to hold things on temporarily, right? So that's why I wanted the blended wines to be about sort of holding things together.
I love that back label.
Yeah.
Well,
kudos to you as a marketer. I'm like, wow.
I had really good copywriters.
Yeah, that was
Jean Jacote wrote that part of that for me. Yeah,
and
she did a great job.
And I think that's something that as a wine industry we need to continue doing more of, is that authentic story which you're sharing.
Right.
You were in the theater and making it approachable.
Yeah.
And I was curious about the name as well. So really well done.
Thank you.
Also delicious.
Just maybe.
Get in there, Brian.
You are host of the show, Brian. You can have a microphone.
It is the 21st, and Adam is here, and so we just sort of wanted to raise a glass. Adam did a project with Philippe Combi called Beaumarchais, and we still actually see some of your wine club members periodically coming into our tasting house, so thank you.
Well, I was just texting with Simona Pali, Philippe's assistant there. Sasha, who we've got a project still going with, was just with Isabelle Gassier. And
we missed that dinner because we were
last
here
night
at the DTC Wine Symposium.
But we've all been texting about thoughts and memories, fun thoughts and memories of Philippe Camby today on his on this very special day. So
This would be his 63rd.
63rd birthday today to one of the great winemakers in the world of all time, but also a person who taught me a lot about his heart and shared that as well. And that's a really special thing. And he passed way too young. But fortunately, we still have some wines that he has been involved with and inspired over time. So, I
have 3 Combi made wines that I'm opening tonight. I don't know what you're doing. What you're sticking around for? We'll find you and make sure you get a couple glasses.
Right. Right.
I mean, Philippe lived a life, a short life, but man, what a good life he lived. From my little bit that I got to meet him and learn about him. So,
And, hyper focused on flavor.
Yeah.
And in a way that, the three combi projects that he started in California was the Bon Marché, the Downstream, and Adutet. And, we were in the position because of Isabel working with our family that we were able to, sort of transition that to the next generation. But tasting wine with combi's voice in your head, especially Grenache, is such a powerful thing. Thinking about searching for that elusive flavor, the black licorice, whatever you would want, or texturally, and there's not a ton of people that I've come across in my life whose dedication to flavors was so powerful that every wine that I taste, I think of what Combi would have thought of that wine.
Yeah, so we were blending the first Bon Marché, and it was 2020 before we were working on our first blend.
That's February 2020 when he was here.
He was here, and I had just landed from seeing my mom in Texas, who was 98 at the time. And by the time I get up to the airport, from the airport into Sonoma County, get notice that my mom had passed at 98. And Philippe's like, no, you need to go back. And I'm like, no, I just saw her. Everything is fine and all of that. So we went ahead and spent the time blending, and he would always check in with me. And then a while later, after we gotten to know each other well, he calls me up. And it's unusual that he would just call me. And he calls me up. And he asked how I'm doing and this and that. And then he's like, my mother fell and broke her arm, and she lives some distance away. And I know that you took care of your mother when she lived a long way away. Can you give me any hints or any thoughts about what things to do? And so as much as I love thinking about him with wine and thinking about things like that, I think of that story and that kind of person more than anything else.
Well, yeah, well said. Thank you, Adam.
Okay. Does everyone get a little contact info?
Oh yeah. How do we buy these wines, guys? wine marketers. We're at the DTC.
Well.
Get us some DTC deals.
Let me help you there. We do have a product locator available at jlohr.com. And so our product locator will allow you to find any of our wines anywhere by varietal, series, if you want on-prem, off-prem, etc. The wine that I particularly pour today, it is a small production wine for us. So it would mostly be found at one of our 2 wine centers. We have a wine center up in San Jose in the Silicon Valley. As well as one down in Paso Robles. But you will find it occasionally at a fine restaurant around in Monterey as well.
Scratch is a tasting room in Carmel Valley. And if you're in Carmel, do a day in Carmel and then do a day in Carmel Valley. Carmel Valley, we have about 20 some odd tasting rooms there now. And you can walk around. Yeah, it's really developed a lot.
Yeah.
And so I have my tasting room there, Scratch, and also scratchwines.com. It's not a DJ school in LA. Scratch Wines.
You guys should do a collab, though. That'd be pretty cool.
And then Wrath, we have 2 tasting rooms. Wrath, you can taste at the winery in Soledad, which is open Friday through Monday, so just the weekend. And then we have a 7-day tasting room as well in Carmel Plaza.
Okay.
www.rohrwines.com.
There you go.
We'll get it to you.
And I've got a few different websites because I got all sorts of stuff going on. But most of them are combined on adamleewine.com.
And I got to give a shout out to Adam for your writings.
Yes.
You do a great job.
Fantastic rabble-rouser.
Yeah, and the last letter to the Surgeon General, there was some magical writing in there. So
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done.
I appreciate it.
It's nice for you to put the words out that I can only read because I can't possibly produce them.
Well, if we keep drinking here, we'll see what shows up in the panel in a couple hours. There might be a little more rabble rousing going on.
When Adam Liu comes out.
Awesome.
Thank you all for having us. This has been fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks for helping us get down here.
We're excited about sharing Monterey with you all today.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, look forward to the talk later on, guys.
Great. Thank you.
Awesome.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Thank you guys so much for doing this. Really appreciate you coming and doing the podcast and doing the panel. It's like we're doing a lot of experimental things this year with the wine symposium, and Monterey has been very generous to us as a symposium. They wanted our business. They're very we want you to come.